extensive challenges. Question number 1. As for this question, we have 1 times by 3 plus 2 times by 4 plus 3 times by 5 all the way to 11 times by 13. So some of you will say, I can get the product of each two pairs and then add them all together. But that's going to waste you a lot of time. We have to use some skillful ways to solve this. And actually, guys, you'll find the difference between these two multipliers always 2, right? This is 2, and the difference of this is always 2. So actually, that means you can convert that into the formula, which is the inverse use of this a squared minus b squared. So what does that mean? That means if we have this a adding b times by a take away b times together, that equals to a squared minus b squared. And the reason why we use this is because 1 and 3, you know the difference is 2, right? So that means if we find the middle number, which is 2 for this 2, and 1 is just 2 minus 1, and 3 will be 2 plus 1. And also as for the second pair, you got 2 times by 4, right? You find the average of these two numbers, you got a 3. And the relationship between 2 and 3 is that you can get 2 by doing 3 minus 1. So this one is 3 minus 1. But this one will be 3 plus 1. And if you times them together, you'll find it is just a adding b times by a take away b. So that means we can convert this calculation into this form and then convert that into the difference of the two squared numbers. Okay, so guys, let's do that together. The average of 1 and 3 will be 2. So 1 equals to 2 minus 1 times by 2 plus 1, adding 3 minus 1, right? That is 2, times by 3 plus 1. And then let's write down one more, which will be 4 minus 1 times by 4 plus 1. And then let's just moving on to the last term. The average of 11 and 13 will be 12. So that will be 12 minus 1 times by 12, adding 1. Okay? And now, guys, let's remove the bracket. Let's see what we have. 2 adding 1 and then times by 2 minus 1. That equals to 2 squared. Take away 1 squared. And then you're adding 3 squared minus 1 squared, right? And then that will be 4 squared, adding 1 squared. Okay. Sorry, it's going to be take away, not adding. So take away 1 squared. And all the way to the last term, that will be 12 squared. Take away 1 squared. And now, guys, we can put this 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, all the way to 12 squared together, because we know the formula to get the sum of all the square numbers, right, starting from 1. So you have this 2 squared, 3 squared, all the way to 12 squared in the bracket. But don't forget, you have to take away that once. But as for this taking away 1 squared, how many of that do you have? You have 11 of that, because it's starting from 2 and finish at 12, right? So that will be 11 of that. So we minus 11 times by 1 squared. But actually 1 squared is just 1. And now let's do further step. Here, guys, let's see. We know that as for the formula that you want to use, which is 1 squared, 2 squared, all the way to n squared equals to n times by n, adding 1 times by 2n plus 1, and then divide that by 6, right? But let's say we must starting from 1, right? We must start from 1. But for this calculation here, you start from 2. Then what should I do? I should add a 1 squared to it, right? So that's going to become 1 squared plus 2 squared all the way to 12 squared. But since I add 1 squared to it, I have to take away 1 squared to make the result are not changed, right? So add 1 squared to this bracket. So finally I have to take away that 1 squared. And since here you take away 11 times by 1 squared, so we just take away 11, okay? So that's it. Now we can use that formula. Because n equals to 12, so you do 12 times by 12 plus 1, which is 13, times by 12 times by 2, which is 24, and then adding 1, which is 25 over 6. Okay? And then take away this 12, because you minus 1 squared and 11. All right, let's see what we have. As for this calculation, you'll see that 12 is just 2 of 6. So you simplify that, you got 2 over here. So you can times 2 and 25 together, that'll be 50. 50 times by 13, you got 650. And then take away that 12. So the final answer to this question will be 638. Okay, that's it.